Alright, so this weekend, Jehovah's Witnesses are studying an article in their Watchtower. Once again, learning how to blame the world and Satan for all their problems when the reality is no one hates them. There's no fire and they create a lot of their own problems. The article is maintain the right view of adversity. Yes, right off the bat, they're being told how to think and feel. It's not enough that you're facing adversity. We're going to tell you the correct way to think and feel about it. Yeah, I mean, instead of doing a big comprehensive rebuttal of this article, I just want to take you into the mind of a witness, to show you a masterclass, if you will, in learned helplessness. So first thing right off the bat that I want to say, when I'm speaking about this, I'm speaking in very broad terms. As I've said a million times before, most Jehovah's Witnesses were born into this. You know, they didn't have the option to leave. They didn't have mom and dad's blessing to just go off and learn different things and do their own thing. You know, unless you came from a really fringe family that didn't care. But most Jehovah's Witnesses who grow up in this don't have a choice. They have to go to the Kingdom Hall. They have to preach. They have to do the whole thing. So this whole idea, you know, that Jehovah's Witnesses create their own problems, I'm speaking in very broad ideological terms. And a friend asked me once, shout out to Jexit, by the way, Riley over at the Jexit podcast. He's also a former J-Dub. You can go check him out if his channel's still up. I'll leave a link. We had a good conversation. He was asking me once, like, you know, were you afraid to leave the organization? Or when you left the organization, did you have a really hard time adjusting? And I'll just say, based on my personal experience, this was just me. It wasn't a huge leap because I had a frame of reference. I had, quote, worldly family members, extended family members who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. I went to public school, held down a job. It's not like I was living on a compound. So basically the bottom line was, yeah, of course you have problems when you leave. Everybody does. You know, just like common daily stressors, work, bills, laundry, you know, that's just life. But I was telling him that being one of Jehovah's Witnesses absolutely made everything harder. And anybody, any former Jehovah's Witnesses who are watching this will tell you, it's like a full-time job you can never escape, right? On top of work, school, you gotta go to meetings 3 to 4 times a week, door knocking, preaching. You have to study their publications and materials. You might be given what's called an assignment in the congregation where if you're a guy, you have to give a lecture or a talk. And sisters, the women in the congregation, had to give demonstrations and practice those for weeks. So basically, you know, what I was telling my friend Riley is that, yeah, being one of Jehovah's Witnesses absolutely exacerbated whatever existing stress and exhaustion I already had from just day-to-day life. Secular life. And so we're talking, and I just love the way he put it. He chimed in, he was like, yeah, he says it's like swimming upstream with rocks in your pocket. I was just like, bingo, he gets it. It's just life. Everybody's got something. You got daily stressors, you got things you gotta do. But add on top of that witness life and witness schedule, and it's such a burden. So to see paragraphs like this one, you know, that states adversities are unavoidable in this wicked system. First of all, that's just life. Everybody faces some sort of adversity. They want to act like they're a special oppressed group, but more on that later. But also the irony of telling Jehovah's Witnesses how to view adversity. Here we are, you know, telling you that you need an attitude adjustment. You just need to view things differently. Yet they're choosing to view the world as wicked instead of training Jehovah's Witnesses to notice the positive. You know, if you're determined to see the world as only a source of strife and hardship, then of course that's what you're going to find. That's a little something we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course, the reason they can't do that is one of the core foundational tenets of the Jehovah's Witnesses is that they are God's chosen people, the one and only correct religion, and outsiders are going to be destroyed. So right there, they can't acknowledge that the world has any redeeming qualities or that life doesn't have to be this way, because then their logic would instantly fall apart. And finally, Jehovah's Witnesses wouldn't dare admit that a lot of their problems are self-generated through their own strict routines and the expectations that are placed on them. You know, that would be blasphemous. Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on earth. They're told these activities are supposed to make them happy. See, it doesn't fit the narrative that Satan is causing their problems. This wicked system, this external factor is causing their problems. If they admit that it's internal, if they admit that the organization is the main source of their stress, it doesn't fit the narrative. Everything falls apart. All right, the whole part I mentioned earlier about being a special oppressed people. You guys remember that movie Blast from the Past that came out in the 90s? Well, Brendan Fraser plays a grown-ass man who's born and raised in a bomb shelter that his father built. His father is played by the genius Christopher Walken, who takes his pregnant wife, played by Sissy Spacek, who also gave a genius performance. He takes them underground into this bunker because he's afraid they're about to be nuked by the Soviet Union. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie. What happens is just a random plane crashes into their house, but he gets the wrong idea. And so they stay underground for like 30 years, and she gives birth down there. And it's just absolutely hilarious when Brendan Fraser leaves the bunker to navigate the outside world. But the sad part is at the end, he has to basically break the news to his father, like, hey, Dad, everything that you were afraid of, it didn't happen. The Cold War ended a really long time ago, and the massive apocalypse that you were anticipating never happened.
Eve, her last name, Rostakov. That's not Russian.
No, it's Ukrainian. Her grandparents immigrated.
Okay. So now imagine breaking the news to witnesses. No one cares about you. This whole us versus them mentality, this grand opposition or grand plan or scheme against you guys as a group is manufactured. Are there people who don't like you? Sure. Are Jehovah's Witnesses being persecuted in different parts of the world? Absolutely. It's terrible. But you guys also aren't unique in that way. Those same countries are persecuting all types of people. But again, Jehovah's Witnesses are hit with that realization that they're not special. What are we doing, right? What is this all even about? And so basically, the last concept that they're really trying to reinforce in this article and in witnesses' brains is, to beware of entertaining your doubts, because that will only make things worse. Just keep busy, Jehovah's Witness activities, and that will fortify you. No, that's just denial. And I mean, this isn't unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. A lot of former cult members recall how exhausted they were. The group was constantly trying to present this kumbaya image. I guarantee you, if a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses were honest with themselves, they'd admit they're pretty miserable, because it's a hallmark of a cult to keep you so busy in activities, so you don't have the time to really stop, really pause, and really reassess or think about what you're doing, how it's making you feel. You can't do that. You just got to plow through it. It's a combination of thought control, emotion control. The more entrenched you are, the more exhausted you are. You're far less likely to put up a fight. You're in a vulnerable state. You're more susceptible to their influence. It's the classic scenario or situation of a woman who's in an abusive relationship. Her husband or her boyfriend's beating her or whatever. And some well-meaning person might be like, well, why don't you just leave? It's not that simple. She's been conditioned. She's been beat down physically, emotionally. She can't wrap her brain around just leaving, wrap her brain around some sort of escape plan. Just like the organization, they teach you you're nothing without us. If you leave the organization, you're going to die. That's what it's like. It's like an abusive, narcissistic relationship. Jehovah's Witnesses organization, that's why I always talk about it in broader terms. Yeah, you get individual, crazy Jehovah's Witnesses, but as an organization, it's an incredibly narcissistic, psychologically damaging organization that, wants to keep you docile and malleable, so you won't stand up to them. It makes sense. I mean, I remember when I was growing up as a J-Dub, I was super stressed, anxious. I was really unhappy. All the adults around me, obviously, are like, oh, just pray more. We'll go out and preach more. It's okay. We're here to help you. It's like, oh, God, stop.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
You're the problem. You're what's making me go insane. We're able to cope with our problems better because we're Jehovah's Witnesses. No, I would argue the opposite. Because we have all this extra crap on our plate, we're even more stressed out. It was a really dumb, arrogant position that was just inaccurate. So witnesses are trained to cry persecution, embrace their victimhood as like a form of martyrdom, and, wait for paradise. Paradise will just fix everything. You're training them to be helpless so you can control them. Paradise ain't happening, So there you go. Another brainwashing technique, courtesy of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with seeking a higher power greater than yourself, some sort of stress reliever, some healthy coping mechanism. Well, we all need that. There's nothing wrong with that. But you also have personal agency. Pretend we're not talking about the witnesses. Take it out of the witness context. All right, I don't know who you are. Let's say you're in a situation right now where the people around you want to drag you down with them. They're consistently negative, woe is me all the time. That shit gets old. Just remember, this too shall pass. And if your so-called friends want to drag you down with them, I can guarantee you it's because they're highly insecure and they haven't worked through their own baggage yet. You need some new friends. All right, bye, bitch. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you next time.